Thank you. Hello, everybody. Right, thanks for coming here and listening to us. We'll speak about QSOS. Who knows about QSOS already? Few people, right? For the others, it's good that you are here also. And for those who know already, it's good also, you'll see why, right? So yes, we'll speak very quickly about QSOS, like 20 minutes. We've been presented, that's our pet names, right? I'm a monkey, you're a panda.
I'm a panda.
Right. So the agenda, basically a bit of history by myself, then Gemna will deep dive into what is QSOS and how to use it. Then I'll speak about the reboot of the project, and we hope the community. I've recorded a small demo. I hope we'll have time to show it to you, and then some conclusion, and I hope some time left for discussions and questions, right? Right, so first, 20 years ago, yes, I did create this methodology that stands for Qualification and Selection of Open Source Software. The challenge at that time, and actually it's still a challenge today, even worse, the problem was an exploding ecosystem. So as an open source consultant, my customers were asking a lot of questions. How do I select the proper solution that will meet my needs, but also how do I manage the inherent risk linked to the fact that it's a software and it's an open source software. And traditional methods were failing how to capture this very specifics of open source and the quality of information that we can gather, because there's a lot of transparency in the open source community, more or less. There are hidden risks also that we are able to assess with such a methodology, strategical ones, technical ones, but also community, governance, maturity of a project, not only the software that the project is building, right? So the solution was to formalize the framework with a structured way to differentiate between open source options, try to tend towards objective analysis with data-driven contextualized qualification. So we did separate, and Gemna will show it in action, the step of evaluating a solution and then contextualizing it for specific needs, and to be able to do educated choice, bridging the gap between the maturity of the project and then the business needs that the solution will cover. So basically, the QSOS is that first a methodology, that is structured, that can evaluate and then compare open source solutions, but in a contextualized manner. Why we created this method in the open, so it's under open source license, because I don't like the eat your own dog food. We're in France, so we drink our own champagne, right? Good. So yes, we think that's more than coherent that to have an open method to evaluate open source projects and solutions. Closed method hides their biases. Basically, we don't know. When you see some things like Gartners and stuff, you don't really know how they do evaluate things, not in the details. It's all about trust also, because it can be peer reviews in the crowd-sourced way. And no more starting from scratch. That was easy for me to convince my customer and say, at the moment I give you this study, it's obsolete. So what can you do to have this study still alive and still updated with new versions that are compared, or new solutions, by contributing it back to the community, right? So we do crowd source intelligence or something like that, right? So no more starting from scratch. So no secret, no secret black box, and all in the open. Well, 20 years after that, so 20 seems to be the good maturity. Maybe I should update the maturity criteria. It's just like Silex. 20 years is a good age, right? If I look back in the mirror, what can I see? On the bright side, we have some strengths, very foundational strengths. We did separate, since the early start, the methodology from the tools and the format themselves. right? And the methodology proved to be of value with time. The logic that was encoded in the methodology is still valid 20 years after. On the community side now, I always said if you apply QSOS maturity criteria on QSOS, you'll find some kind of risks. Here we are now. So there was quite a high adoption of the methodology. It's used in the French government, and you will speak about other usages. But there was some inherent risk that the QSOS method allows to pinpoint and to highlight. Tooling obsolescence, definitely now everything is obsolete, and a single vendor dependency. At that time I was working in a company, and it was quite a little bit too linked to this company, right? So the reboot that we are starting right now is not to rescue a broken ID. The ID is valid. It's just how to move from a technical set to something that will be in the center of an open community. More on that on the reboot part. Okay. So
now I will talk about you with a quick presentation of a method. So what's the point for QSOS? So QSOS means qualification and selection of open source software. And it's a comprehensive and open methodology for studying free open source software. So there was some tools, but when I start to use QSOS, I don't use these tools. And we need now to industrialize the methods. So we will talk about the new tools later. So there is an iterative process in 4 steps. The first is to define. You need to identify the software families, licenses, and community to assess you want to study. So you have a problem, like I want to know which are the open source software for bureautics. There is OpenOffice, LibreOffice, Collabora. I don't know which one is the best for me. So I will select the softwares, and I will establish common open source criteria, like materiality, technical functionality, and domain-specific requirement. And after this organization, I will evaluate all my softwares behind this criteria. So I can I can apply some score to each criteria. It's a simple scale, 0 to 2. 0 is the features is not in the software. 2, it perfectly fits my needs. On 1, it's in the middle. There is some, it fits, but not at all. And it can be easier to define what is needed to reach the two level scales. So with this evaluation, you can know if a software has which functionality are covered by the software, if there is some user risk, and you can provide these risks. And you can qualify and organize criteria into evaluation axis. So you can have some visual diagram to help you to know which are the features lacking inside the software. For example, if you study LibreOffice, you can see that for the for the Word alternatives writer, it fits more of the features, but for the alternatives of PowerPoint, Impress, there is more lack of functionality, so you can know where you what to attempt from this software. And after knowing and comparing the different software, you can select the software which is the best for your needs. And it's an iterative process, so because you can you can loop and study when there is another software, and if a software changes, and so it's not you do the study once, but you need to sometimes update it. You have 2 ways to use QSOS methods. There is the full QSOS methods and the light QSOS methods. The light is you go faster, and you study the risk of maturity, community, and you don't have to study all the features. And the full QSOS method is you go deeper and you study one by one the use case, the functionality, and you can add other criteria. So with this evaluation, after this evaluation, you have some you have the maturity of a project, you can study the project from the point of view for technical, because you are a big company and you need software which is scalability, performance. Is the security taken very seriously, or there is many severe and you don't know how when it will be corrected. The functionality. So with these methods, you can know if the software fits your needs, and the risk, if there is a legal risk, licensing, who is behind the software, the governance. So with these methods, you can cover all the needs you have when you want to study an open source software. So adoption and use in a professional context. This method was created 20 years ago and is still used. I go further up, and it's used because it's making objective decision making. It's scientific methods, and it's not subjectives. Or there is in the criteria you can add weight. So some criteria can be more heavy in sense of weight, and some criteria can be more not needed or mandatory, and so you can have mitigate your risk, and you can you have cost efficiency because you avoid of going on software which is not maintained, or who has a small community, or it does not exist anymore. Inside these methods, you can know that if the software is still alive or not. You have time saving because you don't go for POC, proof of concept of each software. With the result of the study, you know this is the software I can go for POC, or there is no software, there is no maturity actually in open source domain for the needs I have. And collaboration is important. We will talk about later, because we need actually a collaboration inside QSOS community. And inside the governance parts, there is an important point is to address the vendor lock-in avoidance. It's not because it's open source, but there is no risk about vendor locking after if a license change or not. And it's in the governance parts, you need to study this and address this point. Okay. Some success stories. It was originally created at Atos company, and Atos and other companies still use these methods. But in the public sector, the main user is the French ministries inside the marché interministériel, and all the studies they are doing with the QSOS methodology are public and available in the Adulact GitLab. So if you have some needs about what are the alternatives to VMware, there is a study about it with public under free Creative Commons license under this URL. Okay. So now it's time to show you the reboot and the quick demo.
Yeah, I'll speak about the reboot, the demo. I don't know if we have time, but that's not a big deal. The reboot, so yes, we want to reboot it. We want to learn from the past, and by applying an explicit governance. So we are about to apply, or we're under heavy discussion with the Eclipse Foundation to put the project under the Eclipse Foundation umbrella, and to make sure that it's anchored in a trust-neutral ecosystem where everybody can come and contribute to the project, to make sure that there are no more a single link even to me. I can disappear. That's correct. And we want to solve the past and have some clear, explicit governance. On the product itself, well, we speak now about the product and not the tool, and we want to make it more user-centric with a unified web app and modern technology, because the first tool set was developed in Zoo, for those who know about Zoo. So quite a long time ago, right? So as I said, no database. It's easy to host anywhere. We want to make it very simple, reduce the friction to minimum. The pivot really is to not just update the code of the tool, but to rebuild the ecosystem around the method itself, to challenge the method collectively and to improve the tools. So we did a MVP. I don't know, we have 4 minutes. It's not. I prefer to keep time for questions, and during the question, maybe I can show a few things. As a conclusion, maybe some takeaways, and then I'll wrap up.
All the companies are actually asking about studying softwares, and we need to share our QSOS studies. There is further features of the weight of on the functionality. Maybe you can keep it for you, but once someone has studied the governance behind a free software, it could be interesting to share it through the QSS community, to not do in order to everybody is not doing the same things always. We need to create a kind of common database about some criteria that are available or needed for all the people here. And it's enterprise ready. It exists since 20 years, and it still continue. And providing the code source inside the Eclipse Foundation, we hopes to have a focus on the tools, but on the methodology too, and to organize ourselves to share our knowledge about the governance behind the free software we use.
And speaking about community, so yes, the roadmap, and the roadmap has to be refined, defined, advanced within the community. So that's just a vision at this time. But some technical evolution, maybe on the maturity aspect to adapt that. It was created 20 years ago. Since we had the cloud, now we have the AI. So we might need to add some new criteria in that, but we want to do that and by discussing with the community. Maybe some automation also, because 20 years ago we used to do all by hand. Maybe let's investigate how we can automate or semi-automate the evaluation or the update of existing evaluation to make our life easier. And of course, experiment with AI and to see what the value it could bring, but at what cost. So augmented life cycle, how to accelerate the evaluation process, and maybe some toolings to open also the QSOS ecosystem and data to the rest of the ecosystem, and maybe being integrated in larger stuff. So basically, the final destination will be shaped entirely by the community, with the community. So first thing, enter the Eclipse Foundation, and then, yes, we discuss. So please come and join us if you want to participate in this reboot and in this collective effort to how to do collectively, collaboratively, some open source intelligence.
Maybe you can launch the video behind behind
take
us,
the questions
and we take the question. But we will see what it looks like actually.
Ask questions. Yeah, there's one. Yeah.
Hello.
Hello.
All right. First question. I've seen that the methodology is licensed under the GFDL, but there is a tooling which is a software, and there is probably data. That's me speaking.
Yeah, that's you.
And probably data to be licensed as well. So does the GFDL fit all together? And the next question is also about data. Do you plan to do an open standard or something like that?
Yeah. For the first question, even in the initial project, we had the FDL for the documentation, the method itself, then the tools were on the GPL, right? But with the reboot, we changed that and we go under Apache and Creative Commons to use like modern, very widespread stuff, right? This is being checked with the Eclipse Foundation right now, right? Your second question was about standard or something like that. Yes, entering the Eclipse Foundation is a good way to go towards this objective, and I'm already in discussions with some stakeholders, including OpenChain, who already have an ISO standard. So I'm trying to inject myself there. I would see where it can go.
Question about how you relate to chaos, like the community health analysis for open source software.
Yeah, we started some discussion again under the Eclipse ecosystem. even, well, it's next to the Eclipse ecosystem. They're more on the metrics themselves, and because we want to go a little bit further, or I mean, even start the automation part, yes, some discussions are very interesting to have within the community, yeah, definitely.
And behind us, so you can look at what it looks like for the grid, on the criteria, on the weight you can apply to each criteria, on the diagram it generates in order to know the completion or the lack of features inside each open source project you are comparing with others.
Yeah, there's one question.
It's following on from that previous question, because there's also the OpenSSF scorecard as well.
Yeah.
And there's a huge amount of the risk. I think you mentioned risk as key, one of the criteria that businesses need to look at. With things like the regulation, like COA, we need to have that assurance that the products are being looked after and are secure. So OpenSSF has done that, but the challenge they have got is they have only looking at the large projects that are probably pretty well looked after. How do you ensure that this project picks up the small projects as well, and so we can share as a community the evaluation?
Well, actually,
and OpenSSF does a lot of automation as well.
Yeah, that's the point. That's why from the early start, at the early beginning, I said I don't want any automation because I won't be able to see this project, or I won't be able to evaluate Postgres community. Everything is going through the mailing list, for instance, at that time at least. You know. So yes, that's why I'm coming from an industrial background, and I'm very pragmatic. And I say I really want to know what are the risks that I'm taking, like maturity-wise, but also functional and technical coverage, whatever the size of the project is. Another question I will answer, but that is not asked there, but I was often asked the question, why don't you also integrate closed-source software? I say you could, but the problem is it's a black box, and most of the time, and I'm coming back to your question, we make the confusion between the maturity of a vendor, an editor, and a product. It's not the same. If you take Oracle, for instance, or big vendors, no names there, they can easily buy a product and kill it, right? But Oracle is still mature and viable, right? And with big ecosystem, and that's the end, it can be the same also. That's why we have to go to be very precise and do it manually sometimes, yes.